Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Thomas Waterhouse and here's what's coming up. Afghan authorities say repeat violations of COVID-19 lockdown measures are making a difficult situation even more difficult as aid agencies battle to prop up a struggling healthcare system. Scientists warn the outbreak could push one of the world's rarest great apes closer to extinction. We bring you a report from Indonesia's tropical forests. And it was an epic pedal home after the virus left them out of work. An Indian girl cycles 1,200 kilometres, making good on her promise to safely return her injured father. Well, as the coronavirus spreads in Afghanistan, the alarm sounded by international and local NGOs is ringing louder. With both the economy and the healthcare system already bruised by years of conflict, aid agencies say their fears of a humanitarian crisis are fast becoming a reality. Our team on the ground explains.
With tools racked to the backs of their bicycles, the mobile mini circus for children's team is on a new mission. They have replaced their juggling balls and circus props with painting kits. Zarif Khan and his colleagues joined forces with shopkeepers in the capital to impose social distancing on customers. In Afghanistan, the pandemic is accelerating. As the war rages on between the Taliban and the Afghan government, the Islamic State group also continues its deadly attacks. On the 12th of May, armed gunmen targeted this maternity hospital run by Doctors Without Borders in Kabul. 24 people, including women and children, were killed. Despite the massacre, the organization continues its activities throughout the country.
MSF is, let's say, to a certain extent used to work in difficult circumstances. This is very new for all of us. It's a difficult situation for all of us.
This camp in the outskirts of Kabul is home to hundreds of families displaced by the war. Fardeen used to come here to entertain the children, but since the start of the pandemic, he is no longer here to play.
We are here to distribute the water tank, give it to the IDPs and teach them to wash their hands properly and to be away from corona.
In this camp, hygiene is a major issue. In Kabul, the epicenter of the disease, COVID-19 cases are increasing. According to a recent study, 1/3 of the city's residents are contaminated.
Well, this week's guest is a Chinese dissident artist who's known by his nom de plume, Badiucao. One of his latest works, titled A New Tank, which was made in support of Hong Kong activists, was unveiled this month in front of the Danish Parliament building. He joins us now from Melbourne, Australia. Thank you very much for being with us here on France 24. First of all, why are political cartoons and satire so powerful to you?
Well, satire cartoon has this magnificent power to deconstruct the authority of tyranny like China. It empowers people to telling them politicians or leaders are not gods. They shall be challenged all the time. And artists are trying to helping any of the activists or dissidents to express their criticism against the authority. But also, I think political cartoon has this humor to comforting the people who are in this kind of desperation of protest. It helping people to have a brief joyness when they have to fight all day long.
Now, your criticism of Beijing has forced you to work underground and in exile. Tell us about what life as a dissident has been like.
I just want to be an artist. But because of my artist focus that subject me to this very harsh condition, that I have to live a very cautious life, that actually even outside of Australia, outside of China, thousands of miles away from China, that I still have to worrying about like being followed by possible agents. My internet or mobile phone got cyber attack all the time. I have to use VPN to get access to internet, even outside of China. And this is just a part of the reality that I have lived in. Plus, there are families of mine in China got harassed all the time. So I don't think anyone would envy my life.
Now, we've seen the ongoing pro-democracy movement return to the streets of Hong Kong recently. China's parliament has now overwhelmingly approved directly imposing national security legislation on Hong Kong. How do you see the situation in the city panning out there?
I think that is a very dangerous move. That's showing the world the Chinese government do not really care about human rights or democracy. Because we used to see Hong Kong as a lighthouse for a possible change for mainland China. Maybe because Hong Kong's different, it will bring in, the hope of democracy and freedom for this country. But now all of this has been bankrupt. The so-called one country, two system is totally dead. And I think this is basically the last nail on the coffin of Hong Kong's freedom and autocracy, and Hong Kong's autonomy. So this is really a bad moment for all of us. I have to emphasize on this, that Hong Kong's freedom are not just for the people in that city. It is also a front line of battling between authoritarian society and the free society, like all of us are enjoying now. So it's really bad news for me and for every one of us.
Now, China is, of course, the epicenter country where this whole COVID-19 pandemic stems from. What is your view of Beijing's management of this health crisis?
Well, obviously, it's very problematic and inhumane. We all know in the very beginning that China tried its best to covering the pandemic or the outbreak. It silenced people like Dr. Li Wenliang, who are the whistleblower doctors, try to, warning the people around him. Then the China is moving with this very brutal locking down. We all see the price that the residents in Wuhan has paid. And also, there's something that we can never trust any of the numbers being opened by the Chinese authority. I never trust a second for the death roll or the infection numbers being published by the Chinese authority. I would have to say that the whole world now is suffering because of lack of transparency, because of lack of freedom of speech. I think it's a moment that the world should unite to criticize China's handle of this crisis and to asking the responsibility from the Chinese government.
OK, the Chinese activist and cartoonist Badiucao, thank you for joining us here on Access Asia. Moving on, the pandemic has also had a knock-on effect on our closest relatives in the animal kingdom. In Indonesia, the already endangered great ape population is at growing risk, with sanctuaries racing to protect them. Brian Quinn reports.
They may be isolated in some of the world's most remote tropical forests, but the great apes are themselves now threatened by coronavirus. Gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans, all susceptible to contracting COVID-19 just like their human cousins. These are gibbons. They've been captured and brought to this sanctuary for protection before being re-released into the forests of Borneo. The center's French founder, like everyone else, must now be disinfected and have his temperature taken before getting near the apes. The food that arrives by boat is carefully prepared.
Donc tous les fruits sont désinfectés et ensuite ils sont lavés à nouveau juste avant le nourrissage, notamment avec du désinfectant et du vinaigre.
Then the final step. Just like doctors in a hospital, the caretakers don personal protective equipment from head to toe.
tous les membres de l'équipe portent une tenue bien particulière qu'ils n'utilisent que pour aller voir les gibbons. Et puis évidemment, le port du masque en permanence, c'est déjà quelque chose qu'on faisait auparavant, puisque les gibbons, comme tous les grands singes, sont sensibles à toutes les maladies humaines, et même les bébés gibbons peuvent mourir d'un simple rhume.
Dinner is finally served, safely. On the same island of Indonesia are also found orangutans, a species in critical danger of extinction. Half of their population on Borneo has disappeared in the past 20 years. Here, an NGO shelters babies whose parents have been killed by poachers. Orangutans too can catch the coronavirus. For now, no fatal cases have been reported among their numbers, but concern is growing.
They are already so few. If the COVID proved to be a lethal disease from which they die, a terrible death, from respiratory problems, that could be a final push towards extinction.
There is one bright side to this shared vulnerability. If a coronavirus vaccine for humans is found, it will likely also protect the great apes.
And finally, it's been described as a beautiful feat of endurance and love. But for the Indian teenager at the heart of our next story, there was simply no other option. She pedalled hundreds of kilometres to her home village from New Delhi after the coronavirus left her and her father out of work. Peter O'Brien has more.
1,200 kilometres, further than the distance from Paris to Rome. Over 10 days in hot weather, on a second-hand city bike laden with her dad and all her belongings. Pictured here on local television is the 15-year-old girl who's achieved just that, riding from Gurugram near New Delhi to her home village in the northeastern state of Bihar.
My name is Jyoti Kamari. We have come from Gurugram. My father had an accident, so I brought my father here with my bike.
Kamari, a secondary school student, moved from her village in January to take care of her father. He's unable to walk and earned a living as a rickshaw driver. Along with millions of other migrant workers, he was left jobless after India was suddenly locked down in March. With no money to pay rent or buy food and public transport halted, Kamari pedalled them back to their village, surviving on food and water from strangers and only once accepting a short lift on a truck. The remarkable journey made headlines and caught the attention of the Cycling Federation of India, which has offered Kamari the chance to try out for the national team.
And that's all from me and the Access Asia team. Do stay tuned to France 24. Our coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic continues.
After 2 months of empty streets, schools and offices, France is lifting the lockdown. New hopes and new challenges arise as the country learns to live with the virus. Join us on France 24 for our post-confinement programme.
Post-confinement on France 24 and France24.com.